Hi everyone, thank you so much for joining me for episode 13 of Friday Book Bites. And today I'm excited to be joined by author Kaneana May. Hello Kaneana, how are you?
Hi Sandy, thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Thank you for joining me. Today we're going to be talking about love, but not soppy love. We're gonna make it interesting. But before we do, I will just pop up the details of a giveaway that I'm going to run in conjunction with today's session, just so that I don't forget to do it. So for anyone who makes a comment or asks a question, either during today's live stream or if you're watching this back up until Saturday night, you will go in the draw to win a copy of Kaneana's book, The One, and a copy of my book, The Banksia Bay Beach Shack. So talking about love today, Kaneana, and the reason that I wanted to talk about it, and I mentioned this to you when we were messaging last week or during the week, and it actually came to me from a quote that when I was interviewing Kyle Perry a couple of weeks ago. For those of you who don't know, Kyle is a new crime writer on the scene, and something Kyle said to me stuck with me, and it was this: every story is a love story. And that came from a crime writer, and that got me to thinking about other genres. Now, obviously, in yours and my genre, women's fiction, there's usually a fair bit of love or romance in there. But in a story like Kyle's, which is this gritty, atmospheric, dark, crime novel set in Tasmania, you wouldn't think that it's a love story. And so it got me thinking about other genres. And I'm going to ask the audience while they're here, actually, if they can think of any books that, maybe on the surface aren't really romance or love novels, but in reality are. And I've just pulled a couple off my shelf, and I was thinking of things like Divergent, which is a YA dystopian story, and there's lots of love in that. And even something as wild and crazy as Game of Thrones, which nobody in their right mind would think of as a love story. But love is what drives so many of these characters to do the things that they're doing. So I wanted to ask you, Kaneana, why is it, do you think, that we can find love across all of these genres, not just in the traditional romance genres?
Well, I think that it gives the reader, or it gives the viewer, if you're talking about TV or film, something to identify with, because everyone loves someone, and it doesn't necessarily have to be a love story. It could be child and parent. It can be a sister love. It can be even a friendship. It doesn't have to be constricted to a head over heels falling in love with someone. But love connects people, and I think that human connection, when you're reading a book or when you're watching a film or a TV show, you want to see that connection on screen, and it's something we all aspire to. You all desire that feeling of love because it makes you feel good. The hormones make you feel good when you love someone, or you have that, I know as a mother, that feeling of love that sometimes overpowers every other feeling. You think, I know one of my favorite things is when the kids are asleep next to you, and that's really because they can't do anything wrong when they're asleep next to you. And but even the love that I have for my sister is very different to the love I have for my husband, say. But that love, and I think you always look for that in a story. It brings you together.
Absolutely. And Claudine has commented that love is what makes the world go round. And Leanne has commented that, we all need love in our lives. It makes us feel good. I'm going to come back to this. Janet has mentioned The Tattoo of Auschwitz is a love story.
Oh, that's my next book club read.
Ah, there you go. Again, a story that on the surface you would think it isn't, but it is. Sorry, Kate's mentioned that she stalks her daughter when she's asleep.
I know.
And I think that's something that I know I have faced writing in the genre of women's fiction, and I don't know if you've had this experience as well, but sometimes we can be a little bit poo-pooed for the fact that love is a feature of our stories. Yet, as we've just proven, you go into any genre, you can see it. Why do you think it's poo-pooed like that?
Oh gosh, yeah, I don't know. Because I think I'm very open to like romance is one of my favorites. So I think I find it a bit difficult to kind of understand exactly why people don't like it, why they shy away from it, or why they think it's a bit ridiculous or over the top. I know that I think the same thing happened to me, because I went through school loving school, and then I went back as a teacher and thought, oh my God, there's people out there that don't like school, and that kind of was like, a light bulb, thinking, oh, okay, people don't like it. And I think that kind of thing happens in the books that I like. Sometimes you think, oh, am I supposed to feel embarrassed about the books I like? But, I don't. But I know that there is opinions out there where they don't love love. Or maybe they secretly love love.
But even if you don't love love, as you mentioned earlier, there's so many different forms of it. It doesn't have to be that romantic love between two partners. It could be the love that a parent has for a child, or a sibling love. It could even be, and I'm thinking particularly of something like Game of Thrones, where she's actually in love with her brother, which is a whole nother story which we won't get into today. But that love of power, or that love of a goal that they're going after, it's such a driving force.
Well, is the beach, Leonardo DiCaprio and the beach, well, that's more of the love of an idea, isn't it? So it could be more, or even love could be addicted to, or addiction, stories about addiction and that love for something. And because I think with love, you can't fight love. If you love someone, it makes you do things that you wouldn't do for someone that you don't love, essentially. It's a driving force in a story. And I think with addiction too, I assume that addiction makes you do things like love that you wouldn't do if you weren't addicted to something. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense to me. And it's interesting that, we think of some of these other genres where you don't, first think of love, but if we dig deep enough, we find it. And I think that's because we're looking in the wrong places, maybe. We're not looking at that story of, and one's just come to mind, The Room, with the mother and the child. You don't know The Room?
Oh, that's scary, Sandy. I'm not very good with scary.
No, that's okay. I haven't read it either. But at its heart, it is a love story as well, what that mother is willing to do of that child.
Katniss Evergreen in the Hunger Games, she enters herself for a sister.
Yeah, and that's what I think. When we dig deep, we find it everywhere. And Claudine's actually raised an interesting point here, and it could be controversial, but I think most of my listeners are women, so we're probably going to be okay. And that is, she thinks that the reason love gets poo-pooed is that, romance is traditionally most commonly written by women, and is therefore seen as lesser. Do you agree with that?
I can understand that, yeah.
Yeah.
I remember Cassie, who I know Cassie's on here, but she wrote a great article about, and I think on some podcasts that I've listened to of her, about saying when she had first written After the Party that she was downplaying the fact that it was a light-hearted, and it was, she said that she was making excuses. And jump in here, Cass, with a comment if you can articulate it better than I can. But I know that she wrote a blog post about feeling that she needed to justify that she was writing something that wasn't like a literary award-winning, hard, in my mind, to read if it's high literature.
Yeah.
And I found it a really interesting article, because when I first did get the deal for the one, I was saying, oh yeah, it's just just a romance, or it's just about three women, and I was putting that word "just" in front of it. I didn't mean to put the word "just" in front of it at all.
Yeah, and I think that's actually part of the problem, that we ourselves, perhaps unconsciously, perpetuate those thoughts that, you know, it's like I've written an article about being just a mum. You know, it's just a romance, it's just a mum. That just changes it so dramatically. And you know, if you're talking about your story, The One, which is about finding the one, but that's not all that goes on in the novel. You know, there's so many layers to it. You know, so many other things that happen that aren't just about the romance. But we tend to sort of forget that those other things have to make a story as well.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah. The other thing is that I think that even if you think of some of these non-traditional romances, sometimes it's the absence of love that can drive a story or drive a character.
Yeah, that's true.
And again, I come back to something like the Game of Thrones, you know, when you've got characters in there that, you know, that don't receive the love and how it, you know, guides their choices, shall we say, in life, that don't, you know, necessarily come off good for other people. So, you know, if we have characters that don't have love in their life, how do you think that changes how they would react to situations in their story?
Well, if they don't have love in their life, well, Sandy.
You know, because, you know, we focus obviously in our stories about, you know, either achieving that love, whether it's romantic or whether it's familial or, you know.
Yeah, the stories that I would read, you would be searching for love. So are there stories where they don't search at all, or they don't want it at all?
Well, yeah, and I'm thinking of some of those darker genres, or maybe they want it and they can't get it, and that can change a person's perception of the world. Somebody further up, I think it was Maya Linnell here, there it is. Everybody wants to be loved. If we can't find that love, you know, that changes who we are and what we do, I think.
Yeah, I must say, Sandy, in terms of the darker genres, I was someone that used to get scared in the TV show Charmed. Not even talk to me about the X-Files. So our last book club book was a thriller, and I slept poorly for 4 nights straight because I'd read like 80 pages each night, and I was like, oh my God. The pain of I must get swept away so easily in the story, and I get so scared and on edge. And the other night my husband was watching a movie that was scary and I couldn't even handle the music. I was like, okay, I'm going to bed. I was at my desk, I can't even sit in the room. But the thriller that I did read, it was all about there was a love of her sister. So
yeah, so there you go. So even in a dark, scary book that you can't manage to you know, bring yourself to read, love is there. Cassie has put up the link to that article. She said you've got a very good memory in case anybody is looking for it. I'll just leave that up there for a few seconds, and I'll pop Claudine's comment up in a moment because it's quite a long one here. She's saying she doesn't agree with this, that this is the way romance writing or stories with romance are seen as just women's fiction. I'm assuming she's not saying she disagrees with you and I think she's agreeing with that concept that it is women's fiction. Is that right, Claudine?
Yeah, I mean, I know that there's a lot of people's opinions about the women's fiction and the normal fiction. I'm not at all offended by the women's fiction title myself. Like, I don't. If other people have a problem with it, I'm not going to argue that they shouldn't, per se. But I like women's fiction, and I kind of like that I know that if it's a women's fiction book, it's going to be about issues that I would be interested in as a woman. But I know people don't like the labeling of women, and therefore maybe men won't pick it up. But
yeah, I'm actually with you on this. I don't have a problem with it at all. You know, that is the majority of my readership, and I am aware of that. And I don't have an issue with it being targeted that way. And the other thing I sort of have wondered over the years is, rather than fighting against it, should we embrace it and actually make the men want in instead of us wanting out? and have women's fiction be this thing to aspire to as a man.
That's a good idea. Make them jealous that they're not in the club.
Yeah, I mean, there's only so many times you can beat your head against a wall, right?
Yeah.
So I think we actually need to flip that kind of thinking, and if we hold women's fiction up to be something really special and really important, maybe then they'll want in.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I want to read stories about problems that women face, and whether it's about friendships and working and motherhood and anything that is as a woman that you're interested in. I think if something was labelled men's fiction, though, I wouldn't be interested. So I can see that. I can see where people have the argument, but I like that idea of trying to make them jealous of our club.
We'll work on that behind the scenes. So while we're talking about love, and we've mentioned that it can come in so many different forms, what I wanted to sort of jump off that into is, why is it important not only to see it in different forms, romantic love, familial love, sibling love, community love, but why is it important to see it in other genres as well?
Why is it important? I think it's a part of everyday life. But it also, I think it makes it easy for, as a reader or a viewer, to identify with. So you get that identification with the character of what they do love or what they don't love, and makes you connect with them. Yeah. And it gives you empathy.
Yeah, and there are studies that show the more people read, the more empathetic that they are as humans. I also think it's important that no. I was just going to add in that for those men who won't read women's fiction, it's important for them to see love in all its forms in the genres that they do read.
Yeah, well, that's true. That's a good point.
Whether that's crime or fantasy. And fantasy is another one of those genres. I used to read fantasy a lot as a kid. I don't read it anymore, where, it's not the main theme that happens in the book. Obviously, it's the quest in a fantasy novel that's important, but there's always romance and there's always love in a fantasy novel as well.
And I think because love does come in such different forms, I mean, if you just look within your own friendship circle, the relationships, even if you just are talking about love, like the relationship that I have with my husband is different to the relationship that other females have with their husbands or partners. And I think if you are seeing a variety of representations on the screen or on the pages, it probably makes you feel better. Like because sometimes in life you can go, well, why are we arguing about this when this isn't a massive deal for someone else? Or then you see that people react in different ways, and that does come down to the relationship that they've formed together.
Yeah, and I think that's a really important point, that the love we have for our husbands or our children or our mothers or our neighbours is very different. And I think it has to be. You can't love everybody the same way.
No, that's right. My kids only a few weeks ago were saying, because I just have a joke with my kids that if one of them, I've got three, and if one gets something and the others don't, or in that kind of situation, I'll say, why did they get such and such? And I just say, oh, because they're my favourite. And I just say it in response to any of them, and make sure I share it around the three. But this competition, because they what they other two have gotten, or what or the other two want what the one's got, and I kind of like, instead of having to justify why that one person got something, so they're my favourite, and so then they started saying, well, who do you love more? You love us or Daddy more? And trying to explain to them that the love I have for them is very different from the love I have for my husband, and vice versa.
I think every parent has faced that question at some point. I know I certainly have. Do you love me or Daddy more? It's a bit different, darling. A bit different. And Kate has actually made a comment that kind of ties in with this. Yesterday, when she was walking with her almost 3-year-old, she stopped, hugged her on the legs just to tell me that she loved me. Now, if a grown, friend of yours did that, you wouldn't react in quite the same way, would you?
No. No.
Well, I hope you wouldn't react in quite the same way. We've got a question here from Leanne about your book, Kaneana. Can you tell us a little bit about the one, which I'll just hold up here for everybody, without giving too much away?
I've got a shiny copy that someone's covered for me, because I got, when I went to all my book tours last year, I got everyone to sign it, which was nice.
I thought that was a brilliant idea.
Yes, it wasn't my idea. Someone suggested it to me, which was great. It's about three women. It's about it's a behind the scenes of a reality TV show. I think The Bachelor, and there's a producer, a contestant, and an occasional viewer. So the story switches between the three women's point of views, and they're all searching for themselves as women, but also for their happily ever afters along the way too. That's a quick brief.
And how much of your background as a screenwriter in television played into the writing of this novel?
Yeah, well, I did used to work in TV and was, even though I was in the script departments most of the time, I did TV production at uni, and then I still would go down onto set occasionally, and I would see all the things that would happen on set, and I had lots of friends that I went to uni with that worked on different shows as well, and some on reality TV shows. And it was more to do with, I think, things that I had known for so long. It was watching a series of The Bachelor with friends, and we were in a group chat, and things that the others would say that I was realising that I knew that, oh, well, they'd probably been asked by a producer to say such and such, and the setups that I knew would be happening behind the screens, I had like this moment, I'm like, oh, not everyone knows all that kind of stuff. And then I started thinking about, I wonder what it would be like to work on a show like The Bachelor, and that's the character of Darcy, the young producer, who is eager to climb the career ladder. I kind of thought of her first, and what she would be willing to do to push for, because they're pushing for ratings. They want good drama, and she wants to work her way up the career ladder. So I started thinking about her first, and that's where the idea kind of came from after watching a show, a series of The Bachelor, but which I've watched for years.
Yes, yeah, that's one thing we have in common. Anyone who's been to any of my author talks knows that I'm quite a fan of The Bachelor myself. Struggling a little this season, but that's a conversation for another.
Oh, I've actually only watched the first episode this season. I'm finding, I'm just finding it difficult to fit it all in at the moment.
It can be tricky. It can.
Oh, thanks, Claudine. I've also got this little. I had my first published work was a short story in. It's a YA anthology. So I've got a short story in this, and it's about two sisters. So it is a story about love, but about two sisters.
Love again. Yeah, it's everywhere. It's oh God, I just had a flash of Love Actually come into mind. It's all around us.
Yeah, right. Well, I've actually just watched. Have you seen on Amazon Prime Modern Love?
No.
It's got Tina Fey, and it's got Dev Patel and Anne Hathaway, but it's all short stories. Apparently, it's made from the New York Times or something. It was like an anthology, like a series that they've developed from an article that they. So they've developed it anyway. So there's 8 parts. It's all different love stories, so they're not connected. So but it's really great little short love stories about how love's heavy and complicated, and how you learn lessons, and how you can be heartbroken, but different times and periods of different in your life and stuff. I really liked it.
And also, again, highlighting that it comes in so many different forms as well.
Yeah, it does, really highlights it. And it'd be great to, I think, go and read the New York Times. I think they said it was like it says it at the start of each, I wish I'd written it down, the start of something to do with Modern Love column or something that they had in the New York Times. Yeah, so it was inspired by that. But different forms of love is always nice.
Yeah. Jodie said she loved reading The One. She read it in one session on a long-haul flight. Does anyone remember what those are?
No.
Oh, no. That actually is a nice lead into, particularly at this moment in time when the world is, how important it is for us to read about love stories, I think.
That's right. 2020's been
Oh, I think I've frozen Kaneana. Right, she's rebooting. There she is.
Well, I didn't. Oh, you're frozen for me now, but that's fine. I'll just keep chatting and hope that that's okay. But yes, 2020 has been a very rough year. I think we all need a bit of hope, and there we go. Yes, Modern Love column was submissions from readers and very popular. Okay, yeah, I liked it.
Yeah, am I back with you now, Kaneana?
Yes, you are.
Okay. Yeah, so particularly in this time, and I know I've been speaking to my publisher quite a bit lately about, you know, how things are going in the pandemic, and my book, The Banksia Bay Beach Shack, came out the week that the first lockdown happened, and how that's affected things. And one of the things that they've seen, and this is only anecdotally at this point in time, not actual facts and figures, that genres like yours and mine are actually doing okay during this pandemic. And I think it's a really interesting comment on what people need at this time.
Oh, definitely. I mean, who wants to, like, I never want to read about doom and gloom anyway. I grew up in a house that didn't have the news on. My mum didn't ever want the news on. She was like, didn't want you to know about all those bad things in the world. And that's something that's kind of transferred to our house. We don't watch it. So when my son is in 4, and so they watch BTN, like the behind the news. I've watched a few episodes with him, and I think that's the kind of news I should watch. It's quite calm, it's toned down, it's quite basic, because I don't want to know about all the horrible, horrible things happening in the world. I'd much prefer to concentrate on love stories and romance and stories about friendship and hope. Yeah, I don't. So it's just funny that I was brought up to never know, which makes me a terrible person to have on your trivia team. I'll tell you that much.
I'll file that away for future reference.
I'm okay with TV and books, but that's about it. Yeah, it's escapism. That's right.
Yeah,
and not we can't go anywhere else.
But it's not only that we can't go anywhere else. I think the word that you used just then, Kaneana, is the key. That it's hope. You know, in this dark time, if we're reading these uplifting stories about love, whether it's romantic or any other form of love, it does give us hope and something to look forward to when we come through the end of this.
Yeah, I mean, there's not, as a reader of, you know, I read romance and women's fiction, and I still do read young YA, and I love the feeling that when you're going to bed and you knowing you're going to be going into pages of that you'll enjoy. But
yeah,
but when I was reading that thriller last week, I tell you much, I had to kind of psych myself up.
Yeah, and that's actually that's not a commentary on the quality of that particular story, but an awful lot to do with what's going on inside our own lives at the moment.
Yeah.
And Vanessa agrees with us that she's had a lot of readers emailing her to say that reading is getting them through this time, and the books truly are life-changing.
Oh, they definitely are. And I mean, love is life-changing. So I guess that comes back to the whole point of your today's topic, is that love changes your life. And suddenly, I mean, if you fall in love with someone, you suddenly might not, well, back in the day, you might not have gone overseas anymore, or you mightn't have taken that job off, or you make decisions based on your feelings for someone. And the same thing goes to parents that might get ill, that you might move home to look after them, or you know, for your children, you might sacrifice things that you would have done without your love for them. So I think it goes to all different realms.
Yeah, and I was just thinking when you said when you fall in love with someone and then 26 years later you're stuck in the same house all day, every day with them, and the love starts to waver just a little bit.
Yeah, maybe they should have if they could have predicted that when you're saying your vows all those years ago. But I mean, I really feel for people that are looking for love at the moment.
Oh,
That would be really tough.
yeah, yeah. That would actually make a really interesting TV show, I think.
Yeah, well, I'm wondering what stories are going to come out from COVID.
Yeah. Maya's agreeing. I'm assuming she's not agreeing with the fact that I'm falling out of love with my husband because I'm stuck in the house with him. But how important books are, particularly.
She's in lockdown, so she's more stuck than you.
Oh dear. Yeah, she is more stuck than me. I can at least go out. And Vanessa is saying, it's fascinating in itself to see how love changes over time. It is, isn't it? Because, the love that you experience when you're 20, when you meet, as opposed to when you're 46 and you've got a mortgage and kids and, life in the way. It is a very different type of love, isn't it?
You should... my husband and I, we met at uni, and we were like sickening in love. We were like a couple that you didn't want to be around. Like my parents talk about it all the time. Like they were like, "Oh, you guys were like just like doughy-eyed," and Mum always mentions this first Christmas that he spent with us, and we like gave each other like 20 presents each, and I don't actually think we ever fought until we had kids, and that would have been like 8 years into our relationship. Maybe there would have been stuff early marriage, I think, but I can't really remember ever being angry at him and children were involved.
Well, don't they change the dynamic?
Yes.
For better and for worse. That's a whole other episode we could do just on the children, right?
Very true.
It looks like you might have a kindred spirit out there somewhere, Kaneana. I'm just popping up this comment from Dixie, who said she was watching one of the women from Better Reading, and she said if she reads a thriller at night, she has to leave it on the kitchen table and not in her bedroom. Otherwise, she can't sleep. If it's too bad, she has to put it in her car out of the house.
I like that. But you see, we don't have an internal garage, so I would actually have to go outside to put it in the car, and that would be scarier than...
Oh dear. I'm having a flashback to a Friends episode. I don't know if any of our viewers are Friends fans from back in the day. Joey was reading
in the freezer,
Little Women or something, I think it was, and he was getting to the bit with Joe and he got scared, and he put it in the freezer because he couldn't.
Rachel's got books, don't they? They do books.
He was reading Little Women and he was reading...
I think you're right. Like she was reading Little Women and they made each other read their books. Yeah.
And he got so scared when Joe, fate was going to be revealed. He put it in the freezer. So there's a tip for you, maybe, Kaneana, next time your book club does a scary read. Yeah,
I know, because that's not going to be by my choice that I'm picking it up. It's if someone else in book club picks it and I go, oh, okay.
The freezer is always there for you. And Cheryl's just made a comment on children that, that there is a whole different love when you hold your child for the first time, and for some women, that can actually be a sad time. Women who don't have that immediate connection and suffer from postpartum depression. And again, it ties in with this need for love, and if it's not there, and how it affects us. It can go both ways, can't it?
Yeah, definitely. I just think, but most of those times, all 3 times for me, I was just hit with such relief that it was over.
But we won't tell them that.
Yeah, and then they say, well, it was one of their best days. Like, he was talking about their best days. I'm like, oh, that's a lot of pain in that day.
Yeah.
Anyway.
And Vanessa's been reminded of a meme, and I've seen this on Facebook as well. And this is true love, I think. True love right here, right now. This reminds me of the meme about the book The Exorcist that said someone threw it in the ocean and then their friend brought another copy, ran it under the tap and put it back in her room.
Oh,
True love, right there.
oh, that's so mean.
Yeah, as long as it's happening to someone else, though, it's funny.
Oh, I see. I think I was like, oh God, someone could do that to me.
We won't do that to you, Kaneana, I promise.
No.
Dear. Jodie has seen that as well. I think it was the mother-in-law. My mother-in-law read The Exorcist and got so scared. And that's a whole nother layer of relationship there, isn't it?
Definitely.
Oh dear. All right. I am conscious of the time, Kaneana, and how much of it I have taken from you. So I'm going to pop up your details, and a couple of people have asked the next question that I will throw up as well, if I can click the right buttons. These are Kaneana's details if you want to find her anywhere online, her website, her Facebook, and her Instagram page. And I think 3 people have asked this in the comments. I'm only going to pop up the one. Oh, sorry, before I do, Darty's talking about that's why she reads romance instead of The Exorcist.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Yeah, I don't think I could do anything like The Exorcist. But yeah, Kaneana, what is next for you? There's a few people that have asked that in the comments there.
So exciting, very excited that my next book, which is called All We Have Is Now, is coming out in April next year.
Excellent. And is there anything you can tell us, or is there too many spoilers?
You know, I really need to start working on that kind of really brief elevator pitch. Which
elevator pitch. It's a hard thing to do, isn't it?
It's about 3 women and 3 women that work together at a wellness centre, and their relationships with one another as friends, and then all their relationships within their different worlds as well. But they have a bit more interaction than the one. But the one characters were a bit separate, more like a TV. Because of my training, the TV kind of separated out. But these 3 women are working together, and yes, I really do need to figure out a great hook.
It's really hard. I don't know if people who aren't writers understand how hard it is to sum up your work in just a quick sentence, answer when we're put on the spot like that. It's really tricky to boil it down, isn't it?
Yeah, and I find it really tricky because of the 3 characters, which, I mean, you two too, that it's...
Yep.
You go, well, do I just focus on... Because you can hook, you can say what the hook is for one character, but then you're leaving the other 2 main storylines out. So it's... Yeah, I need to figure that out.
Yeah. Well, we will all look forward to it.
Yeah.
April next year, is that right?
Yeah, April next year.
Excellent. So if you want to make sure you don't miss out on that, make sure you follow Kaneana on those social media channels that I mentioned, and we will look forward to that. Thank you so much for joining me today, Kaneana.
Thank you, Sandy.
I hope you have Sorry.
It's fun talking about love.
It is. I mean, there's no better subject in the world, right?
Yeah.
I hope you have a lovely weekend. It's supposed to be cold here in Sydney tomorrow. I don't know if that's going to continue up the coast as well.
Yeah. 16 and windy.
Yeah, I think we're 14 tomorrow, which I'm not thrilled about that at all. So.
No, I've got soccer at 9:30 or something.
And that's another form of love, watching our children play soccer in the freezing cold. So. Alrighty, guys, we'll wrap it up here. Thank you so much for joining us, and have a lovely weekend, everybody.
And thanks everyone for tuning in.